Romans 8:26. I'd like to read some out of that today. It says, in the same way the Spirit too is helping our weaknesses. For we do not know how to pray as we should, but the Spirit himself pleads with us with unspeakable yearnings, and he also searches our hearts to know what the mind of the Spirit is, or what the Spirit thinks. For he pleads for his people in according to the will of God. I guess if you took this literally, it might sound a little bit weird. It says, in the same way the Spirit too is helping us in our weaknesses. Well, that doesn't mean he helps you in your weakness. It means he helps you to overcome your weakness. It almost sounds a little funny there, but it says that he helps us in our weakness. Helps us through our weakness. Teaches us to learn to trust God. Teaches us to learn to draw on the strength of God. For it says, when we do not know how to pray as we should, the Spirit itself pleads for us with unspeakable yearnings. And he who searches our hearts, who's talking about the Spirit of God, knows what the mind of the Spirit thinks, for he pleads for his people in accordance with the will of God. Now, where I'm trying to get to is verse 28. But in all that, it's saying that you have the Spirit of God there, God who searches the hearts, knows what's the mind of the Spirit, or the will of the Spirit. So he pleads for his people in accordance with God's will. It says, verse 28, yes, we know that all things go on working together for good, to the good of those who keep on loving God, who are called in accordance with God's purpose. Now, many might say and take a look at their life and say today that they're not confident of the fact that all things are working for their good. Some may look at their circumstances and say, gee, this is very discouraging. This is trying to overcome me. I don't see what the purpose is. I don't see the good in it. The good in it is God's trying to build your character. The good in it is God is trying to move you along and according to the will of God. That's why he starts out this passage here talking about the Spirit praying for us when we don't know how to pray for ourselves. We don't always understand. I mean, yes, there's the gift of discernment, discerning of spirits, to dive into your motivations and the thoughts that motivate you. But there's sometimes you just can't get a handle on it. And that's why it's saying here that the Spirit of God, here, that you have an avenue. Even when you think that you can't overcome it, even when you think, or the thought is there, that you never get past this, there is hope. Because why? The Spirit, if you begin to yield to the Spirit begins to pray. The Spirit begins to pray according to the will of God. The Spirit begins to pray. Use your prayers to help bolster you in those areas that you're weak. And he pleads, it says, he pleads for us. He's an advocate. Jesus is called an advocate. Here it says that the Spirit of God pleads for you. Do you realize that? That you have the Spirit of God who's always on your side pleading your case? We forget that sometimes. You're not on your own. You're not your own. It says you bought a price. Jesus gave his life for you. But after that, you're his. You've given your life to him. And you're not on your own anymore. Unless you want to be on your own. But you don't have to be on your own. Here it says that you don't know how to pray. You don't know what should I do? You're in a situation you don't know what to do. Begin to pray in the Spirit. Begin to pray according to the Spirit. Begin to pray in the Spirit and allow him to lead your prayers, lead your faith, lead your hope in a direction. Why? Because he who searches our hearts knows what the Spirit thinks. For he pleads for his people in accordance to the will of God. It says, yes, we know that all things are working together for the good of those. It says, yes, we know that all things go on working together. There's not a start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. It says go on working. God is constantly working. The Spirit of God is constantly working for your good. It says, for the good of those who keep on loving God, who are called in accordance with God's purpose. Are you called in accordance with God's purpose? You say you're saved, well then you're called according to God's purpose. He saved you. It says all things continue. All things go on working together for good. In other words, they continue. God doesn't stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. It's there. He's continually working for the good of those. For your good. To those who love God. Well, what does it mean to love God? Who are called in accordance with God's purpose. What does it mean to love God? What does it mean to love God? 1 Corinthians 13 says, and I'm just going to bring out a few things, because there's 13 is very descriptive of what love is. But one, it says it exercises faith in everything. It keeps up hope in everything. It gives us power to endure in anything. So what am I saying? What is love here? Love is you keep exercising faith in everything. Love in this instance is keeping hope in everything. Hope that God is working for your good. That's what love is. It's continually exercising faith in everything towards God, that God's working it out. He's changing you. He's building character. He's bringing about His promises for you. And continually hoping in everything. For those whom He set His heart beforehand, too many pages, He marked off as His own, to be made like His Son, that He might be the eldest of many brothers. And those who He marked off as His own, He also calls. And those who He calls, He brings into the right standing with Himself. For those who He brings into right standing with Himself, He also glorifies. What are we to say to these facts? Say to facts like these, if God is in us, who can be against us? Since He did not spare His own Son, who gave up us all, will He not with Him graciously give us all things? Well, it says here, what can you say to these facts? If God be for us, who can be against us? Well, I'll tell you, there's one that can be against you. Anybody want to answer that? Who's against you? Well, some would say the devil. Well, yeah, that's true. He came. His job is to come to kill, steal, and destroy. He tried to set his throne up above God's throne. Out of jealousy, out of power hungriness. But he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But there is one greater than he in your life. And that's yourself. If God be for us, who can be against us? Well, you're looking, everybody looks at this and they say, well, that's talking about all those people out there. No, it's talking about you, your own self, your flesh. What can we say to these facts then? If God be for us, who could be against us? Only you. Only you can be against yourself. When it comes down to ultimately. Satan has no power in your life if the flesh is dead. So here it is. Who can be against you? Well, you can be against yourself. You can sabotage yourself with thinking that God doesn't love me, or gee, I did this or I did that, and God's going to hold a grudge. He says it doesn't hold that. He doesn't bring. It says, who can bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who declared them in right standing. Who can condemn them? Only you can condemn yourself. Jesus said that He came not to condemn, but to save. It says that over and over and over again. Jesus came to save. He didn't come to condemn. God does not condemn anyone. They condemn themselves. In 1 John 3, 3:20 and 21, it says, I'll find it here. 1 John chapter 3 verse 20 says,